It is no secret that Persians love cars, or perhaps more succinctly, Persians are obsessed with cars. But it's not just always the affordability, the convenience, or the need for transport that gets the pistons pumping, if you will. Rather, Persians seem to like fancy cars, and they see cars as status, and depending on the style or make, your status will zoom or break. Or is all of that a myth? Is it just my extended family that will look at me with concern when I pull up in a English Mini Cooper? Well, today, right now, let's get to two Persian lads in different parts of North America who are surely qualified to answer such sociocultural questions. In fact, they've both built huge social media followings on Instagram and YouTube by talking about cars, with pretty pictures and videos, of course. Vahid Amiri is an engineer and writer and the founder behind the popular Instagram and YouTube channel Cars I Have Driven. He regularly gets thousands of streams talking about and showing off everything from race cars to vintage Toyotas. He joins us from Montreal today. Hello, Vahid.
Hey, Jian, thank you very much for having me here. I'm very happy to be here.
Great to have you on the show from Montreal. And Ali Bekhradi is a former dentist, investor, and the man behind the popular YouTube and Instagram channel Garage Bekhradi. And he racks up hundreds of thousands of posts exploring custom-made specialty cars from Mercedes to old fabulous Pontiacs. And he joins us from Houston, Texas. Hello, Ali.
Hello, Jian. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have both. Now, here's the funny thing about this. We booked you guys separately. We were excited to talk to two movers and shakers, Persian guys who are doing a big business in terms of the number of streams you get in social media. We didn't know that you two actually know each other. And in fact, you guys did some work together and then broke up like the Beatles, right, Vahid?
Yeah, it's kind of like a same sort of story. It's like people start working together and then reach to the point that they want to be independent, and kind of like the ideas are clashing. So then we decided to have more independence present in the social media. But even after that, we continue working together. We actually did lots of video together, reviews of our cars.
You're saying you can stomach doing an interview with Ali as well?
Yeah, we're going for it.
And Ali, are you okay with this?
I am, actually. I should admit something, and I've said it in previous interviews, that if it wasn't because of Vahid, I wouldn't be a person to just show up in social media. You have no idea how many issues I had, just like being shy, camera shy. I obviously live in the States for more than 30 years. I've had problems just remembering because most of these reviews are in Farsi, or like all of them pretty much.
Yes.
So just you can imagine, you could just try to talk about something that you learn about it here. Most of the technical terms and the words that you're talking about. And the Persian crowd is pretty tough. So if you keep using English words, they're like, hey, you're trying to say you're someone better than us. And so I practiced a lot, and Vahid gave me a huge support. And I am very appreciative for what he did for me.
Well, Vahid, how do you feel about what Ali has just said?
Well, I mean, our corporation was actually, it was really good. I mean, we started something that it was pretty small, and then we built it together. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, yes, of course, sometimes we were not really accepting each other's ideas, but it's fine. It's just the beauty of when you do some teamwork. Other than that, I mean, Ali is right. You got to be really careful what you're saying in front of the Persian audience. I'm not that careful, to be honest. I mean, I use lots of English words, and I kind of like I said, but you're here to listen to me, so this is who I am.
I can't wait to get to the ideas that you guys disagree on. This sounds good. I'm excited to hear some of the disparity between you. I love both of your channels because, and I say that quite earnestly, because you're both so passionate. You're like, kids talking about their favorite toy, or people talking about this as if it's a romance. I mean, you were really, really into this. And so I want to just set the stage before I ask you some questions about what you've observed about Persians, Iranians, and our relationship with cars, and whether it is indeed mythical or whether it's the real deal in terms of how important status question cars become for us in our community, both in the diaspora and I guess back in Iran. But to set the stage, let me just ask you about this passion that I see in your videos and the way you guys write and the way you talk about cars. Ali, let me start with you. On your Instagram page, your tagline is, I love cars. Cars give you freedom to travel, freedom to express oneself, and freedom to dream. How do cars give you the freedom to dream? Don't we have that freedom without cars?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Man love for cars, it's either desire to control or real emotions. That's how I put it. For me, it's just kind of both. And just going back to what you started with, like how people, especially Persians, they love cars. One very simple fact is because for whatever reason, just the country's been closed and the border's been closed, and they don't get all the new cars, all the new products that we are just like freely here exposed to it in North America. They don't have them. So a lot of these kids, they go online and they see pictures of some cool cars, some sport cars, and then they just start imagining about it. So I could imagine when I come and just talk about some cars that people just seen only pictures of it, or they probably even heard of it, or not even heard of it. That's just like bring him in line with me. It's like, oh my God, he's one of us. He's speaking Farsi, and he just goes like detail talking about this.
I see. So the freedom to dream, interesting. There's actually a cultural context to that. You're actually speaking of Iranians when you say the freedom to dream, huh?
Pretty much, yeah.
Interesting.
I think I learned about cars mostly in my late 20s and 30s because I had to study, obviously, in a different field, and it was just always something on the side. So the dudes I hanged out with, or just the people in general, because there's some girls too sometimes, they're all from here, and they're all speaking English, and so I didn't have that much of knowledge of how Iranians are and how much they love. Why? Because I was detached from that country for a while. So once I started this page, I realized, oh my God, these are just all my people speaking the same language, and they love the same passion. We are all, sharing the same passion. So
when you were growing up in Isfahan, you were not enamored of cars?
Not really. I grew up in a very, very artistic family. My dad was a professor of art history in University of Isfahan. I had to beg him to change his cars like every 20 years. I mean, I wasn't there for 20 years. And, he hasn't been driven for the past 35 years. He's 75 years old because he didn't have any passion about cars.
So you're saying you grew into a Persian stereotype. You weren't the Persian stereotype in the beginning.
I wasn't, yes.
And Vahid, what is it about automobiles that has so captured your imagination? You've described this almost like a love story, your relationship with cars.
It is actually true. I actually look at a car, it's more, they have like a personality. And and for me, through all these years, I kind of creating some sort of a relationship with all the cars. I mean, the one that I own them, or even the one that just look at them or drive them, which there are so many of them. So I think everything started when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And unlike Ali, my family, they were all into cars. My dad and all my uncles, and they love cars, and they're always talking about cars. So I was around people that the car was big part of their life, and I'm from Ahvaz, Khuzestan. So, people over there, you're exposed to American culture because of the oil field and everything. Yeah, it's just heavily. So car was a big thing. And then my dad, I remember, he used to buy me all these Matchbox and Hot Wheels every time we go out, and it was just like I was collecting so many of them, and I was just spending hours looking at them, or even modify them. Just like I used to cut the roof, and I called them like a cabrio, but I didn't know what he called them cabriolet. You just called them something in Farsi. Darande means it was very, very wild. In my childhood dream, So yeah, I mean, it's everything was always a love story for me. So
Vahid, how has this created issues in your romantic life with potential partners, so that you love cars more than them?
Yes, kind of, because bunch of the time I compare them to the cars, I said, well, you look like a Porsche to me, but nah.
Yeah, that doesn't go over so well. Yeah.
No, not at all.
So Vahid, you are a petroleum engineer. Looking at, both of you guys, like looking at your page, I would think the cars I have driven, I would think that that's a full-time gig for you. I mean, how do you continue? You're still a petroleum engineer, right?
I am, yes.
How do you do that? And like, how much of your week is spent being the car guy?
Well, I had to extend my day. So instead of like a normally waking up at 8, now I'm waking up every morning at 4 a.m. so I can catch up with all the content, and then the time that I spend reviewing cars, filming them, editing, and all this stuff. So it's actually you're right. It's quite a time consuming, but I keep up with it only because I really enjoy it, and I'm kind of like addicted to it. So I'm having fun with it.
Are you addicted to it in terms of the culture of, like, do you watch like car races, Grand Prix? How much of car culture beyond what you do on your page is part of your social existence?
Well, in terms of car racing, I'm a big Formula One, like a fan. I mean, I started watching Formula One since 1991, so it's going for forever. Been in several races. That's how I follow. I actually do commentary on the Formula One for my audience because they really love somebody talk about it in Farsi, and then that's another side of my page. It's just we recently started like about a year or stuff.
So the page is really true to who you are. You're a car obsessive.
Yes, and it's exactly what it is. It's just like people around me or my friend, they don't see any difference me behind or in front of the camera. I'm who I am.
Right.
Exactly.
And Ali, you were a dentist for 10 years, then you were a venture capitalist. How much of your life is now involved in being the car guy?
As of now, I would say about 60% of it. And I'll tell you a story. I heard this thing actually from Jay Leno. When I was dating my wife about 11 years ago, and I had about 2 cars and 3 bikes back then. And I said, look, there are guys that they have 1 car and 10 girlfriends. I promise I just have only 1 wife and 10 cars. And she agreed with it. And I just even convinced her that it's actually cheaper to have 10 cars and 10 girlfriends. So that worked out pretty well. I decided to kind of just like go into the semi-retirement mode that basically I have some properties that I've been blessed and I did some smart investment in real estate. So almost like every afternoon from the time I finish my daily works and daily tasks from like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., I go and stay at the garage till like probably 6 or 7 p.m. I have 2 little boys that I need to spend some time with them, obviously. Otherwise, I would spend like even longer. But that's how it is.
And how many cars do you have now?
42 vehicles as of now. So still cheaper than 42 girlfriends.
Yeah, you own 42 vehicles?
Yeah, so I started collecting them. I started buying cars and restoring them. And, it was for the purpose of just making some money as an investment. And I got attached to them. And that's the worst thing. You get attached to these things. And so I bought some classic cars. I have some newer modern cars. Every once in a while, I just switch them out to something else. So yeah,
Fucking hell. I mean, it's good that you're in Houston. There, you need the space. You need taking half of Texas to just park your. Where do you put all these cars?
So in one of my properties, I've got a warehouse that I decided to dedicate to basically just parking my cars. And you could imagine, first as a Vesfahani and as a real estate guy, I want to make money of every inch of property that I own. So I just squeeze all the cars. Vahid knows, he's been there a few times, as much as possible. And lately, I just basically divided my warehouse and I just rent half of it, convincing myself that at least the other half pays for this half. So, yeah.
Yeah, and therefore put the car on top of each other.
I have to put them on top of each other.
Vahid,
yes.
What are you doing wrong? This guy's got 42 cars. You're still running around being a petroleum engineer.
Yeah, true. Well, Ali, as he said, he was blessed with his investment, but that petroleum engineering thing is another passion. I've been doing this for 22 years. I've worked in all 5 continents around the world, 17 different countries. I really love that. I really, really enjoy it.
You're a true Khuzestani kid. Good for you.
Yeah.
Guys, let me get to the big question at hand now, because I want you to teach me this, and I say I come at this quite innocently as someone who grew up in the diaspora, and maybe it's because I would fit in with your artsy family, Ali. I don't know, but sure. I've never totally. Do I love my cars? Sure. I've often talked about on the program how I've had different versions of Mini Coopers, some of them fancy JCWs and stuff, but for the most part, I just like it. It's a British car. It feels at home to me. But cars have never been a big deal for me. And I've always wondered why my cousins, my Persian friends, why Persian society in general, and the joke I said in the introduction is true. I mean, my extended family, who kind of always look at me wondering why I'm kind of driving the cars I'm driving. I think my parents were their happiest when for about a week I owned a BMW, and until I decided it just wasn't me and gave it back, and they sank back into the depression of being my parents. But there was a moment where they thought, okay, he's turned into a good Persian son. So I come at this with truly wanting to know. You guys teach me, and maybe the audience as well. Why are Iranians so into cars? Let's start with that, Vahid.
Well, I mean, let's just roll back like about 120 years ago when the first ever car came into our country, and it was during the Qajar, and it was just like a big hit, and since then, car was, as you said, was the status, and in countries like ours, it was always more expensive than the first world countries like where we live right now in North America. I remember even when I was a kid, we didn't have so many varieties of the cars. It was still not available like what we can have here in the market. So it was always a precious, valuable things to own. And of course, even here is some sort of a status. People try. You park your car in your driveway and you want to show off to your neighbors. They all do. I mean, if somebody said no, that's not true. And then after more restriction in the country and then the border closed and no cars coming in, the car just went into the different dimension, To be honest, right now in Iran, cars are more valuable than diamond here, to be honest. And it's like, as you can see, you park your car on the street and people come and take your doors. And
because it's harder to get certain cars? Or yeah.
Yes, and the value of the car in Iran is insane. It's just like me and Ali sometimes talk about it. It's just like the numbers doesn't make any sense. The car that here is maybe $50,000. It's $1 million in Iran. So
Ali, I understand exactly what Vahid is saying. It certainly makes sense that why people in Iran, if you go back to say the 1950s, it's a country that's burgeoning, growing economically into the 60s, 70s, and then after the revolution, maybe cars are inaccessible. These kind of things I would understand, but how does that explain the continued interest, obsession, and linkage to status in the diaspora? I mean, how is it bled outside of Iran in our DNA? Can you explain?
Of course. To continue to what Vahid was just saying, I think there's a very practical reason for that, because the way people look at cars in Iran is just basically sort of investment. And because of, unfortunately, the inflation and not the right way of the economy has moved in the past few years in Iran, no matter what you buy, next day you can turn around and sell it, just make a profit on it. So people buy cars in order to invest their money. And to me is, if you say someone here in the States or Canada, like, hey, let's just invest in cars, unless if there's some special classic antique cars that the value might increase or not. In Iran, it's not like that. So people buy cars in order to take their money out of the bank because they think it's safer and they get a better increase in their investment, either short term. We're not talking about any long term. So that might be one reason. Second thing is just, I remember growing up in Iran and all my family telling me that hopefully one day when you're an engineer and you buy your Mercedes, we're going to find you a good, beautiful wife. And this is embedded in our brain that part of you getting just settle in life after you finish your education, either have to be a doctor or a dentist or an attorney, because there's no other there's no other career in Persian parents' mind. Then you have to buy a nice car, and then you're ready to go buy khastagari, and then we're going to get you a wife, or right. So that's trust.
And that's the order, right? You have to get the Mercedes first, yeah.
Exactly, and that has become like an image. The classes and the status amongst Iranian traditionally still play a big role. That. Even Iranians just like lately moved to Canada. The first thing they do, they just try to go buy something so they can impress someone. Or as you mentioned it earlier, this is status thing. So you need to show, hey, I'm doing pretty well. Even though here we all know you could just have $1,000 in your bank and you can just go lease a car for like $500 a month and nobody cares. But this mentality continues with a bunch of Iranians who actually move out of the Iran. So they have to always show this class and the status of, hey, we can do it, able to afford this thing. And sadly, this is only between Iranians. So if you come in with a car and just like you pull up somewhere, if somebody knows that you can buy a car here with little investment, it might not be as impressive than other people that they know about it. Hey, yaru Mercedes savare, pas vazش خوبه. He's doing pretty well.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So to me, it's just like this something that embedded in our culture. And we grew up thinking that one day when I have a house, when I have a Mercedes, and when I have a beautiful wife, then everything is set. I don't need to do anything else.
I want to actually, Jian, sorry, I'm jumping in.
Yeah.
I want to add this. But if you look at other countries, look at the people coming from Africa, Canada. You're accepting immigrants from around the world. So people come from Africa, the same countries that the car is valuable thing over there. Even China, because car is so expensive. The moment they land here, right away they go for buying it something expensive. It's just like I mean, many people come to me, Iranian, and said, "Hey, I'm about to land in Canada in about 3 months, 6 months, something like. What do you suggest me to buy?" And they're all like, I want to buy a BMW, I want to buy a Mercedes. I said, guys, why you want to do that? Do you know that the expense of the cars are not only the value of the car here, but this, as Ali said, this is the status. And this happening with so many other nations, because they're looking back at what they couldn't have back home, and they're going to have it here. And then all my Canadian friends, just like you, they don't really care about the car much, generally 90% of them. They just want something reliable and just take them from A to B. They really don't care.
I'm glad you made that point, Vahid, because we're not exclusively the only people who are interested in fancy cars, or there wouldn't be a global market for them. And even in the States, I mean, there's this tradition of the big Buick or whatever, the Cadillac, the great American cars, etc. But I wonder, in your experience, so Vahid, you're saying it breaks down on a first generation, second generation immigrant from, say, a developing part of the world. That's where you see the difference in terms of what you, in as much as you can figure out the metrics through your social media followers, etc.
That's exactly true. And I can give you a very live example. I have a son, he's 19 years old. And I mean, we are having different kind of cars on our driveway for test drive, all fancy and expensive and fast. And he shows next to nothing, interest. It's like, they're all cars, I really don't care, because he grew up here. So all is just like, look at a car as a tool. He doesn't, he's a pure example of somebody with the mind of Canadian or normal Canadian that's just like, okay, I really don't care.
I want to say one thing too, if I may.
Go ahead.
Us Persians, we love physical beauty. And this is probably one of the reasons that most of us would go and replace our big nose with the subtler ones. You and I didn't do it, obviously. So the better your nose
Throw me
is,
in there. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
The better your nose is, the higher your physical attractiveness, I believe. And this is just a general idea, but it could be applied to the cars too. So the better the car, or the more expensive the car, the higher of your status. So this is a physical thing that you could see it, you could feel it. And for the same reason both Vahid and I said, that's just why people love to have them. And the more expensive, the better it is.
I should just also note that, we are three dudes talking about this, but it doesn't appear to be gender exclusive either. Even, Ali, your examples about the Mercedes and then the wife, etc. Most or a lot of Persian women I know, like the Persian girls who've come from Iran in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of them still want to drive fancy cars. I mean, it just crosses genders as well, right? Is that your experience?
I believe so, yes. But I think guys in general make probably a little bit deeper connection with their cars to compare with women. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are ladies that they could be as car fanatic as a guy could be. But generally speaking, I've seen a higher percentage amongst guys than ladies.
There's a Persian woman I know in Toronto. I don't want to get too specific with her in case she's listening at it. I wouldn't want to offend her, but she has a very modest job and a very modest income, and lives very modestly, like a sort of a studio apartment kind of thing, but drives a fancy Mercedes SUV. Because that, one of you guys was making the point about the image that it gives of, somebody is a success. Vahid, does it surprise you when I tell you that story about a young Persian person in Toronto?
It doesn't surprise me at all. And I have to add this. If a Persian man, want to have a fancy car, maybe he's looking at his horsepower and drive and how it drives and the quality of the drive. But women look at the cars as a jewelry, some sort of accessories. They really don't. And I've come across so many women that are asking me, "Yeah, I want to buy a car, but I don't care about horsepower or how many gear he has or what sort of a suspension or how good is with the curve." But it does. Is it the Mercedes? Is it the Porsche? Is it the Range Rover? And that's for them is a jewelry. And this is all over the place, and it's very normal.
Okay, why? Since the name has come up a few times, why is BMW and I mean it's almost a joke, BMW? Why is BMW and Mercedes still so important to Iranians, Vahid?
This goes back through the history. Mercedes and BMW were great before revolution in Iran. Their marketing was amazing, and they were status. I mean, look at the movies from those times. Wherever show somebody from the very rich family either driving a Mercedes S-Class or a BMW, and if somebody even close to the king and all, they were all driving these sort of cars or big American cars. So it's implemented in the mind of every Iranian that this is what you need to have. Like, for example, I love Audis, and Audis are very good. They're as good as the Mercedes and BMW these days. But a Persian, they don't like Audis.
No status. Yeah, I wanted to get an Audi at one point, and yeah, my Iranian friends were like, "But why not a BMW then?" Or basically,
Yeah.
I'm curious about that because surely Iranians are smart enough to know that an Audi is a prestige car too, or it can be if it's a very fine car.
But
You know what happened? I'm sorry, Vahid.
Sure.
The first impression of many cars in Iran has been like whether it was a good car or a bad car. I'm a big fan of Land Rover. I always had, beside every other cars I had, either have a Range Rover or a Land Rover. And everybody in Iran thinks this car is one of the worst cars being built. And I've been trying to just tell my followers, dude, first of all, some cars are not built for every people in every kind of all kind of income. So this car is coming at the price of $100,000. The person who has the money invests in it and buys it and enjoys it. And then when it comes to the troubles, he drop it and he go buy another one, right? But everyone, and even if I bring a brand new Range Rover, this Saratana, this is a cancer. Why? Because back in the days in 1970s, when some Range Rovers were coming to Iran, they were British cars, they were difficult to work with, and obviously mechanics in Iran are so practical. They have only one, no offense to anyone, a screwdriver and a hammer, and they fix the whole car for you. And of course, they couldn't figure it out. It was a very heavy car. It had a V8. So this is embedded in people's minds. Same thing about Jaguar. Every time we talk about Jaguar, this is so much trouble. But they've come a long way. Those people, especially for North American market, it is a huge step up for Land Rover. Even BMWs, they were not as reliable. Why? Because there's a huge competition. So because simply I had a bad experience in Range Rover in 1978, so everything else came after is garbage. And I've been having an issue just telling these followers that, look, technology is changing. These companies are sold from one hand to another one. Land Rover was sold to BMW, then they sold it to Ford, and then Land Rover Jaguar was taken over by Tata, which is an Indian company. And they've been working on their products. You cannot just look at every product through one eye and say, no, they're junk. My uncle had one in Shomal. Every time we were going there, we had problem with this damn car. So please don't talk about Range Rover anymore. I mean, this is the mentality of most of these people.
But I know that there are, first of all, for people listening right now who are screaming at their speakers, there are obviously going to be exceptions. There are Iranians, driving other kinds of cars. There are Iranian women who don't just see it as an extension of jewelry or whatever it was described a few minutes ago. But for the most part, Ali, I don't know if I can remember an Iranian, knowing an Iranian, and Toronto's got a big Iranian community now, knowing an Iranian driving a Subaru.
Right.
It's like oil and water. I can't even imagine it. And that seems absurd to me. Why shouldn't Iranians drive a Subaru, right? But this is why I'm getting you guys on here. Is this a myth or is what I'm saying actually real?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna come talk about this, but I mean, people then come to me and they're asking advice for, hey, I want to buy a car, and even, hey, my budget is 5,000, but I'm looking at the 20 years old Mercedes. I said, why you want to do that? Why it has to be this? Oh, because it's German. It has all this bling. The thing is that they cannot look at the economy car like Subaru or something like that. In Toronto, that strip of all the Persian shops, if you go there and you can park in the spot, all you see is BMW, Mercedes,
yes.
and Lexus as well.
But Vahid, does does a really souped up Toyota or like a cool vintage Pontiac have any cachet, or does it, or no? It has to always be a Lexus or a BMW or Mercedes.
I think for Persian, it has to be the ultimate goal is to get there. Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, Porsche. It's sitting on the top, higher up, and that's what it is. They just going over there, and they want to do that, and it doesn't matter if it's old or new or something like that. And all these I mean, they love Toyota, by the way, because it's economic and it's just blah blah. But Subaru, oh no, it's just, don't even talk about it. It doesn't make any sense.
Subaru is a really good. Was a really good car. I'm not up to date on that, but I remember years ago wanting to buy one. It was like the number one Consumer Reports car, in terms of safety and things like that.
It still is, yeah.
But but that's not that's not what we're not interested in that. Persians,
No.
Ali, on this notion of whether, I'm thinking, if you're really into cars and really into status, then you would think a specialty car, something unique, something vintage would be the ultimate. But it sounds like it has to be, even if it's a specialty car, it has to be a specialty car of a certain brand.
Obviously, yes. So, like any other market, some of this classic or antique cars, if you will, recently in America, or like North America, has just gone up in values like crazy. There are other factors involved, of course. The people are in car business. Somebody has this very special car, very unique, and they just like price it whatever it wants. And if next car comes to the market for sale, they're gonna just look at that. It's like, so this car was sold at such and such amount, so I'm gonna price my car like this. It would surprise you if I tell you that how many people have started collecting cars, not necessarily antique or classic cars lately. Why? Because of this whole Corona thing happened, and I'm sure you've heard of it. There's a shortage of certain amount of computer chips and things that they cannot finish the cars. So the price of used vehicle has gone up to sky. And especially some very unique limited edition cars that they, for example, I have this Mercedes 500E. This was a first production car. It was actually a corporation between Porsche and Mercedes. And it's just like a regular Mercedes 500, so class 124, chassis 124. And it was only 1,500 of that was actually imported to the United States. Believe it or not, that car has gone up about 60 to 70% in the last 2 years. So I was lucky to buy one and have one. So yeah, I mean, there are certain cars that have gone up in value. There are certain cars that are still going up. There are cars that they have a potential to go up. There are much more people reviewing cars, both in English. I'm talking about mostly, YouTube, that people go and look at this car and they start showing interest. So sound like, if I tell you I have 42 cars, it might sound strange, but I know people that they have 10, 15, 20 cars and they're just parking in there. So thing that it was not very common in the U.S. that you invest your money in cars is becoming more and more popular. So yeah, but unfortunately, I think us Persians, especially old school ones, they still don't believe in collecting cars, or car could be intangible for you. It could be something is important for you to invest money on it. This has kind of been exposed to many of my followers, and I've shown them and I'm talking about it, and they're like, oh, wow. And they keep telling, what they're telling me is so funny. Please don't tell us that this Mercedes is going to go up in value, because now everybody in Iran who has the same car, they're going to raise up or jack up the price of the car. But the thing is, because of YouTubers, because of people in social media that start talking and showing interest in some cars, it might have a direct or indirect impact on how valuable that car is going to be in future.
Well, you guys are YouTubers, and you guys are big on social media. Vahid, you have almost 200,000 followers just on your Instagram alone. Who is your audience?
I would say my I mean, obviously, the major audience are from Iran, because as Ali mentioned before, is like the lack of presence of all the new cars over there just make it more interesting for them to us talking about the cars, driving them, and talking about Farsi. But I do know that we have followers from around the world, among all the immigrants, Persian who live in different countries, and we do have audience from the other Farsi-speaking countries, like Tajikistan or even Afghanistan and all this, which is good. I'm really happy that we actually could have attract them to come and talk to us, and this is a good achievement for me.
Vahid, do you find the interest or the questions asked or the level of intrigue different amongst the people you hear from who are inside Iran versus those in the diaspora, or is it generally the same?
What I really see and I like is the people who lives outside of Iran. They challenge us a lot because they, like us, they have access to all the information, and they have touched things and they've seen things. So if they come across things and the questions that are judgment or question that why you say that or why it is, and this is really good. Unlike that, most of the people who lives in Iran, they kind of like accept whatever we say, which I always encourage them to, no matter who is behind a show or behind a video, never accept everything as it is and go and dig a little bit more, because on the side of it you're going to find a lot of more stuff about it. So that, for me, that's the major difference. On the other hand, the people who lives outside of the Iran is just always want to advise what to buy and how to buy it. I mean, just the general question is, lease ya finance konim kodumo? That's a very popular question, and there's no answer to that.
Oh, really? You do you have a personal preference?
But my personal preference to everybody is lease. But since Corona hit, I kind of like the whole thing is kind of changing these days. So I'm slowly moving to go, well, if you think like you want to keep your car for next 6-7 years, try to finance and buy it, because the future is kind of like changing. On the same time, I'm not a big fan of electric car. I mean, you know that, Jian, why? I'm in an oil field, right? But
I'm not going to get into the environmental implications of your job, but I appreciate what you're saying.
But I actually encourage everybody that this is a great time, especially in Canada, to go and buy electric car, because the government gives you lots of aids. So the incentive is really good. So this is one of the point that I always pushing people. Said, go buy yourself a new electrical car, because you get the good incentive from the government. This is the time. You will not have it in 2 years.
Ali, the same question to you. Who do you find your audience is on your successful social media sites?
I think when I look at all this, the statistics, majority of them are from Iran, and the age range is something in between 12 or 14 years old all the way to 25 years old. These are the majority of the audience. That they're thirsty to learn, they're thirsty to see stuff that they cannot see in the streets of Iran. Unfortunately, like Vahid said, most of our followers from outside of Iran are just all coming to the question of, hey, I have $5,000. What do you think I should buy? And it just trips me off, because I'm like, dude, I'm willing to help, but how do I know where do you live, first off? What type of car do you need? Right. Do you need an SUV? Do you need a 2-door and $5,000 Canadian or US? So, we've just been working on this thing. And one thing I like to say, I'm a little bit different than Vahid in just like when responding to my followers. I use a very, very informal language. Vahid knows. I do review on the cars and I start singing in the middle of it. And people are like, hey, please just like tell us when you're going to sing so we can just, lower the volume so my wife doesn't wake up and stuff. So they feel very comfortable approaching me. But I kind of learned that I could teach them things like, hey, look, let's just like try to look at things from a different perspective. Challenge yourself. Learn about these things. You have no idea, thanks to Roqe and so many medias that you guys are running, I've started showing the books that I'm reading every week to my audience. So it's not all about cars. And many of these people are very grateful. It's like, Thank you, Ali June. Let us know. And so, look, guys, I read this book and I think it's very good, and it has nothing to do with the cars. So I'm trying to just kind of just like teach them, different ways of looking at the stuff. Hey, there's Google in there, there's internet, and when you try all of this thing and you couldn't find your answer, then you can come to Ali, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Some of them, they started just raising their guards, like, who do you think you are? You're not answering. I'm like, no, dude, I just want you to learn. I just want you to try it on your own. Make a mistake, because nobody taught me. All I know is by reading and doing practical works on cars. And so it's kind of like working out, and I'm telling everybody, just try to get out of this comfort zone. Maybe the fact that us Iranian, we all just like to buy the same thing. If one person buy the Mercedes, he bought the Mercedes and he was good, and every other Iranian behind him is going to buy that car. Maybe you could try different things. Just have the courage to step out of it and say, no, you know what? I want to try a different. I'm just talking about cars, but it could apply to anything else, to any phenomenon. So I'm working with this young audience, and I think a lot of them are very flexible, and they're actually very grateful that, hey, thank you so much. Beside cars, we learned that this thing is good. I love watch. I'm collecting watches, and sometimes I put live about watches, and some people are really like it. So you just need to know what this audience wants to know, but at the same time, just show them, like, there's a way to get in there. There's a way to learn about this thing. So try it your own, and if you couldn't find it, just come to me, and I'll be more than happy to help you out.
For me, it's all about cars. 95% about cars. I really don't go any other field. Even people are asking so many questions, but I shut it down from the beginning. I said, well, this is only about cars here, so I don't want to get in somewhere else. But and you realize one of the reasons me and Ali maybe not working is because he's singing, Jian.
Traditional Persian music.
Yeah, traditional Persian music. Yes.
And you just couldn't handle that anymore. What's wrong
Not
with
anymore.
What's wrong with our Sonati music, Vahid? What do you got a problem with that?
It doesn't really goes with the cars, and at least in my mind.
Vahid, you said something interesting a moment ago that actually was a good segue into something that I wanted to ask you guys about, which is that I wanted to ask you about detractors, and I was thinking about the fact that, I mean, Iranians, we've joked about it a lot on the show, and we've actually talked about it in a non-joking way too, that there can sometimes be an attitude that "Ma ke midunim," we know everything, we know the answer, and particularly I'm thinking around cars. It makes sense that you've started these social media sites and that they've become astronomically successful, but I would also think it's got to be difficult navigating through a community of people who are going to say, well, what are your qualifications? What do you know? I mean, or question what you say or do or are interested in. Let me hear from both of you on that. First, you, Vahid.
Oh, I mean, this is obvious. It's just like we've been questioned all the time. What I see, the trend that I see is people who are a regular audience of my page, that they're always coming back. They know me very well. They know, some of them, they know me because when I started everything back in 2012 in the Facebook, and the whole idea was like, hey, I'm driving different cars, so shouldn't I share the story of these cars with other people? So start writing about them, and all those articles were so popular. They end up being in the Majale Machine, which I loved it since I was a kid, blah blah. And then so people come, some of my audience are coming from that time, so they're come in peace with me. They agreed that I'm reading a lot about cars and driving them, and I have friends that they're into the management or production and blah blah blah. But then the newcomers are the one that it just come right away. They come so hot at us. It's like who do you think you are? It's just like talking about this, and what do you know about cars? And you must likely say, "Persian to furukhti, ina sawar shadi." تا دیروز پیکان داشتی حالا اومدی right. Stuff like this.
Ali?
I have a different take on this. I remember watching one of your interviews with Justin Trudeau back in 2014.
Yes.
And he mentioned something about Canadians, some of them, that they think that if somebody get out of Canada and made it up there, you give them more value and more thumbs up that to compare with someone. I don't remember exact words that Mr. Trudeau used, but same thing about
We
Iran.
sometimes have
like,
to leave the country and become successful somewhere else to be validated in Canada.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the same fact applies for many of us Iranians. So if somebody get out of the Iran and, for example, like he just made it to the point that he could have some cars, can afford to have a good style of living. So most of this kid's looking at, wow, so he really knows what he's talking about. And I've just heard it. Of course, there's a small percentage of people, no matter what you do, they're never happy. They send you all kind of words that, you just have to block him. But a lot of these people, because of the fact that we're broadcasting this videos and this social media channels from outside of Iran, a lot of them give it a little bit of more value and like, oh wow, so this guy knows what he's talking about. Some of them are asking, hey, can you talk in English? Can you please just say some words in English so we can learn? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can, but let's just learn. So they think because we're here at the source of basically everything of car wise around us. So we know what we're talking about. And I consider that as a good point. But at the same time, I turn around and tell them, look, I'm somebody like you. I just had an opportunity to come here and I studied here. It doesn't mean I know more than that. I transfer what I know. It could be wrong. It could be right. But yeah, that's how I look at it.
What is the most frustrating thing about Persian attitudes and cars? What is the most frustrating thing, Ali?
I think mostly people that they have experience on without having, depth and knowledge of talking about someone. That tricks me off. I don't like to talk or hear stuff from people that because they're good drivers or they know how to drive in Iran's street, they could talk about everything about cars. And we always distinguish between like there's so many branches of car enthusiasts. Somebody could be a driver, but not necessarily a good mechanic. Someone's a good mechanic, but not necessarily a good driver. Somebody knows how to talk about cars with passion, which is Vahid is the king of it. Sultan, he talks about the ugliest car if he wants to make it look good, and you will believe it. It's like, oh my god. But does it mean that Vahid? I don't even know if Vahid can change the oil of his car. I'm sorry, Vahid. I'm not trying to be rude here, but he's good at what he does. And I've been telling these people, look, yeah, everybody is good at something.
I only find the oil. I don't change it.
That's right.
So they're different. They're different type of people, but those who just come and pretend that they know about everything, and in reality, you don't know they know anything. That's just the most annoying thing to me. I like people. If you're talking about something, you have to base it of some fact that you're talking about, or you need to at least have an experience to talk about it. Just don't come and tell me, yeah, this is like this because I heard it from someone else.
And you, Vahid, same question?
For me is the fact that none of the Iranian buy car that as a thing that they needed. They just buy much more than they needed. So let me just open it like this. So when they want to have a car, but they never talk about the size that they need. They never think about that, how many mileage they're going to have it. So when it comes to that, they just want to buy as expensive as it possible that they have, like they can afford. And this is so wrong. And I came across so many people who said, don't do that. Even close friends of mine said, don't do that. You're going to regret. No. This is really appealing. I like it. My wife likes it. My kids love it and all this stuff. They buy it in 3 months. They say, oh my God, what a mistake I made. This is expensive. That is so expensive. I said, I told you don't need that. But he said, but us Persian, we go to the shop and the guy said, hey, I want to have a carpet. And the guy said, what is your budget? He said, no, the budget is not important. Polish asan muhem nist. It's just like, no, it is important. It's just like you gotta give me the window so I can guide you. So I sometimes say, guys, I'm sorry, I cannot really guide you if you don't tell me what you want, because I have to narrow down among like hundreds. This is really frustrating because I really like to help people to make a right purchase or right choice. But this is quite frustrating. But back to the thing that Ali said about, I'm lucky to have a friend, and a partner Mohammed we call him Mama China, and so we have a garage in Montreal, and then he take care of all my cars, all the mechanical parts, so I never get dirty. he is awesome. His Automo is his garage is great.
What do you find that on your social media sites, on your Instagram channels, on your YouTube channels, what do you find gets the most reaction? Like Ali, I referenced the there was one episode you have, or one post you had, which is just you driving to check out what looks like some kind of Mercedes SUV that's an olive color, and it has like 260,000 views.
Oh yeah.
And I don't even, I mean, no offense, but I don't even know why. I mean, it's sort of interesting, but can you understand why some of these posts get the kind of reaction they do?
I'm going to tell you exactly why. So I mentioned at the beginning that it's very hard to convince Persian audience, right? And it's very hard to expose them to new materials, including new cars or the vehicles that they have no knowledge of. So the reason you see those shows, like some of those videos, they just like, I don't know, like a few $100,000 view, is because I had ordered a G-Wagon Mercedes. And I had talked about it before, that usually you have to put money down. You have to wait 2 years because of how Mercedes wants to keep this car very exclusive. So you have to wait 2 years after you put your deposit to get the car. So first, people kind of knew that this car is coming. And second is, everybody loves G-Wagon. Do you know why? No. Because the Shah of Iran is the one who ordered this vehicle the very first time to Mercedes back in 70s. He wanted to order a vehicle which is an SUV, could be used in the military. So unfortunately, it didn't happen. He even brought the Mercedes and put him in contact with I think it's the company in Austria that making it. So they basically he made that order for them to have an SUV Mercedes. So all Persians, no matter what, they think any G-Wagon that you see in the market, Shah of Iran somehow has been behind it. Even the newer models, which, it's been changed so much. So yeah, that was one of the reasons. A G-Wagon coming, and I had talked about it, and people was like, hey, my G-Wagon is here. And I had no preparation for that video. I didn't practice anything. I just turned on my camera. Yeah. I did it. But guess what? I go and I find a very, very, very unique car, and I spend hours filming it, talk about it. I have to prepare myself, read about it, and it doesn't even get 1/10 of that attention that something like the G-Wagon video got. Right. And it's just so hard to guess that how are they gonna react, first of all, and what material they're gonna like the most. That he knows.
This is so true. Yes, I agree with Ali.
We spent hours working on, putting different cameras in the car, go and find a nice scenery in Texas heat, hours talking about it, editing the video, few weeks, put it up, and it's not important. Okay, yeah, it's nice. Or some of them, they even say bad stuff about the car. I'm like, dude, at least learn something from it. But if Vahid comes and talks some junk about some cars that people have some knowledge of it from the past, oh my God, thank you so much for bringing this memory to us. My dad used to have this car.
Vahid, is that true? Is that what gets the most?
It is absolutely true, Jian. Like, a couple of months ago, I have a friend here that he has this unique, showroom. It's a private showroom, and it has all these special order, custom made, fancy cars up to $1 million. And I made this about half an hour reports from there, and I thought this is going to be huge because each one of these cars are like a piece of a jewelry, and that was one of the worst videos because no one actually connected those cars. Said, we don't care about the Ferrari that is $900,000, or we don't care about this one signed by that guy. I said, come on, guys. And then I did a piece on a Porsche Panamera 2011, very old one. And this was a huge success. So I'm kind of like get confused sometimes. I said, what am I doing here? What should I do? But I guess at the end of the day, at least for me, if I cannot connect to the car that I'm talking about, is this going to be a really bad video? So I really need to have some sort of feeling. As I said at the beginning of the interview, I had some relation with the car.
You and your intimate relations with the cars. I have to say, I have to express my disappointment in both of you that we have basically been talking for an hour or so, and neither of you have mentioned the greatest Persian car of all time, which of course is the Jian.
I wasn't sure how you're going to take it, honestly. I mean, that's the first thing everybody knows when they hear your name. So,
a shit French car that was. Now, I've never actually seen one in person. Have either of you ever seen one or owned one?
I've seen one. I've actually sat in one. I drove one, and it's not. It's actually well known and quite popular these days in Canada and in Europe.
In Canada, there's Jians in Canada.
We do have some Jian here. I mean, one of them is you, of course.
Yeah. When people ask me, depending on how I'm feeling, when they go, "Where's the name Jian come from?" I either say "Shida Jian de or I go,
yes.
"Yeah, a crap car from the '60s." Ali, any thoughts on the Jian?
This is one of the most popular economical car back in, I think, like early 70s when Citroën came with this product. And just to respect what you say, there's no Jian outside of Iran. They call the Jian in Iran. So this is just like the C2B one that they're actually the older version of them. They're going up in value. Some of these auctions that sometimes I attend, that they have one or two and they're going for like $20,000-$30,000. But there was a different type of it. So it was built in Iran, and they call it Jian, and it was just one of the most economical vehicle. It had like a 2-cylinder engine. I think it had like a 3-speed gearbox. And it was a family car. I remember families that they drove from Isfahan to Mashhad with like 7 people inside the Jian, and the poor car was just struggling on the road to get in there. So yeah, it was just one of those like affordable vehicles.
The Jian was a Persian name that they put in. Kind of like they modify it. But the one that we have here is, Ali is right. The one is with the headlamps sitting on the fender.
It looks a bit like an old Lada to me from the pictures. Like a Soviet kind of basic box car. But of course, I have an affection for it, even though I've never seen one in person. Guys, it is such a pleasure to get to talk to both of you and get your insights. A final question to each of you. First of all, Vahid, I understand that you're involved in setting up a kind of a Top Gear, which of course is a massively successful show out of England, but it's sort of been replicated and it's got international appeal. Doing a kind of a Top Gear for Persians. Can you talk about that?
Well, it's no secret that I really love Jeremy Clarkson and whatever he did all these years. I've watched whatever he made and read all his books. So all these years, my ultimate goal was to create a show that is kind of like, a car show. Obviously, Top Gear is the pinnacle of that, but we're trying to do something. So we do have 3 hosts, and it's kind of like a same style, reviewing cars and talk about cars and doing some challenges. So we already did the pilots, and then we're actually shooting next week the episode 3 and 4. So hopefully the first season with 12 episodes will be aired soon.
And do we know where it's going to air, or will we find it on YouTube, or where do we get to see it?
It's not going to be YouTube. It's going to be on satellite TV, but I'm just going to keep that quiet for now.
All right. We'll await the big announcement for where we can see. Does it have a name yet?
Yes, it does have a name, and then we use exhaust or exhaust. So exhaust is something that I really like. Yeah, and it's one of my things that I say. It's like a exhaust آدم خوبه چقدر باشه. And it's just like okay. One of my friend, which is the producer, Pedram, he's decided to call it exhaust or exhaust. So it's the same Persian English name. It's perfect name. We all love it.
I can't wait to see it. And Ali, before we let you go, so I guess I'm curious. I mean, you've been very successful. You were very modest earlier, saying you got lucky or whatever. I mean, you're in your 40s, and it sounds like you've created the conditions where you can do what you want with your life, and that involves collecting a tremendous number of cars. Where do you want to take all of this, and how many cars will be enough?
God knows. I don't know. I'm to the point that if I have a bigger space, probably I'm going to continue buying more cars. But I know myself too. So for a very long time, like maybe my early 20s, I was into motorcycle and bikes, and I just got tired of it, and I switched to cars. So it's hard for me to foresee what's going to happen. I have two young kids, they're both boys growing up. Whether I'm going to just like inherit all the cars to them or not, maybe I get tired of it. It's a very time consuming thing to do, and it's very expensive. You'll be surprised if I tell you that even the cars when they're sitting, they cost sometimes more than when you drive in them, because some of these cars they need maintenance, they need parts need to be changed, and they get older. So I have no idea. One difference between me and Vahid is I am probably from the generation, or we both are, we grew up in 70s and 80s. And I call it the last freedom of speech group, because we just tell whatever it comes to our mind. But Vahid has better control on the way he presents himself. I am much more upfront, and I just like tell the truth. And sometimes it costs me so much. So I don't see myself ever getting to any kind of TV shows, because I can't be myself anymore, if you know what I'm saying. So, unfortunately,
you're talking about the classical singing, aren't you?
Pretty much. Well, yeah, that too. I gotta say something, and it's my last thing, bro. I heard you singing this song. I think it was in 2006 and 2007. By the way, you're a great musician. You're so talented.
Thank you.
And none of your guests ever mentioned this thing, but
they don't know. I don't think they know. I was.
You are a beautiful person in and out, and you're so talented in many ways. And I'm just not saying it because you did this interview with me, but I think the beautiful voice of you, and I've seen you singing. It was the song that I fell in love. If I'm not mistaken, it was just when I was 4, I thought I was a girl, something like that.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I was oh my God, this is. I don't know if you compose it yourself.
Yeah,
or
I did. It was a song called "Lousy Boy." Yeah,
Lousy Boy. Yeah, and I'm not sure if it ever came out or not, but we need this planet needs people like you being public, making our lives better, teaching us how to be different, teaching us how we could be a different, society. And bringing all these people that are just like lately I've been talking about knowing Iranians that nobody knows about it. And I start putting stories of people, and you guys are doing a great job. Good luck and keep it up.
Thank you so much for all that. And we really are, the mission is a real one to try and help to form the connective tissue of Iranians in the diaspora. We do. It was a hunch that I had, and it's been so gratifying that to see it realized as we build this show and this network, that there's that in fact we all have we feel a kinship, we feel a connection with each other, regardless of geography or age or gender or there's the Persians in the diaspora in particular. We really feel this sense of each other, and it's borne out today. With you guys, I know neither of you very well, but you both feel like cousins of mine to me.
Thank you.
And I certainly know after all that you've just said, Ali, which one of you I prefer, because you've been so kind to me. I don't know about this Vahid, frankly, but. But thank you, Ali. Thank you, Ali, because good taste in music and.
Well, I prepared something for closing too.
That was with no preparation. I've been following Jian since like late 90s. I remember your first interview with Harrison Ford. And later on, you were talking about it, that it wasn't one of the best.
It was one of the worst. Yeah, absolutely. 2003.
Well, he's a fellow countryman. So in my car, I'm always listening to your show, and it was just like because I'm not listening to the music or singing. I'm actually listening to something more important. So I was a big fan of your shows, and then I started watching everything in the YouTube, and I have a very good friend. His name is Ali too, and we're always talking about you. I said, "Oh, how amazing he is," and all this stuff.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Enough already.
No,
but I appreciate it.
He's going to put us on air, man. It's enough.
No, but when it comes to this interview, it was like it's some sort of a personal achievement for me. I'm very happy that I had a chance to talk to you, in person, and it is really great for me. I'm super happy with this. So thank you very much for giving.
Hey guys, thank you both. I really did learn a lot, and I can't wait to go pour through the comments of people who think that they who will have things to say about your opinions about cars, and who I'm sure are huge fans of yours as well. I'll keep pumping your sites because I think what you're doing, both of you, is really engaging stuff, and I'm so glad to have you both on the program. In Montreal, Vahid, merci. خیلی خوشحال شدم. See you again. I hope see you soon in person, in fact, in Canada.
Yes, منم همینطور خیلی خوشحال شدم جیان جان.
And Ali in Houston, merci à شما, and thank you so much for making the time, عزیزم.
Thank you, brother. Respect to you.
All right. Vahid Amiri Moghadam, an engineer, writer, and founder behind the popular Instagram and YouTube channel Cars I Have Driven. We reached him in Montreal, Canada today. And Ali Bekhradi, the former dentist, investor, and the man behind the popular YouTube and Instagram channel Garage Bekhradi. We reached him, Ali, in Houston, USA today.